Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to an amazing game that I prepared for you today. It's a beautiful gameplay by the new Stockfish version, by the new Stockfish 15 engine against another top engine Koivisto, and this game is special because you see probably one of the sharpest lines of the Semi-Slav defense. Usually the Semi-Slav defense is sort of a positional battle, sort of a positional struggle, but not in this game. Here you see the so-called Botvinnik variation, and the Botvinnik variation is such an unbalanced opening where black is attacking basically the queen side, white is attacking the center of the board and the king side, so it's really a wild sharp opening. So let's see now what happened. In my opinion, it's also an instructive game because I really like these games that are not so prearranged in a bad way for one engine. Recently we have seen many times that one engine is getting really destroyed in an early stage of the game when it has to play sort of a bad opening, but this opening I think it's really instructive and is playable for both sides, because many games in a database I found where also black is winning the game, not only white is winning the game. So as I said, it's really something worth to study. So let's see now the game. D4 played by Stockfish. We have D5 by Koivisto, C4 the queen's gambit, and after move C6 we have so far the Slav defense. Knight to F3, knight to F6, knight to C3, so the three knights variation, and now after move E6 we have reached now the Semi-Slav defense. Okay, you can do now many things. You can play also the exchange variation, c takes d5, but now with the move bishop to g5 the game is already more dynamic. I myself, when I play against the Semi-Slav, I like to take e takes d5, queen to c2 and similar stuff, so it's I think a normal setup. But now after move bishop to g5 the game is getting wilder and wilder, because also Koivisto played a very cool move d takes c4, and you see now already the pawn structure is unbalanced. We have here a 4 versus 2 situation on the queen side. White has of course the pawn majority in the center of the board, so white is here a 2 versus 1 situation when it comes to pawns in the center of the board. So white has now a dominant position in the center, so it's, as I said, really a double-edged opening line. So after move d takes c4 now we reach the Botvinnik variation with the move e4, and okay, here white is announcing a wild game because white is actually giving up the battle for the b5 pawn. Black will defend this b5 pawn, but white has now also the beautiful e5 move. So that's exactly what happened. We have now b5, so now basically white has lost the battle on this side of the board, but has now opportunities of course on the side, on the other side of course on the king side, and here e5 immediately. And now black, in my opinion, has to react here. Black has to play h6. If black doesn't play h6, it's of course a losing game immediately. So after move h6 we have bishop to h4, we have now g5. This is now must theory here also for black. If we play bishop to g3, then I think black is going into a more solid line. Black is getting much better. Knight to d5, and the pawn structure is cemented here. You don't have any more the opportunity to kick away this knight anymore with the pawn, so the position is cemented, the position is fixed. Black is keeping the extra pawn and has probably, I think, a much better continuation. So that's why after move g5 white needs now to play the sharpest line, knight to g5, h takes g5. After bishop to g5 again black has two choices. Black can play knight to d7 or bishop to e7. Here the continuation knight to d7 was played by Koivisto, and now a risky choice by the Stockfish engine, or Stockfish played here g3 immediately. So Stockfish stayed a little bit with this tension with the Darko bishop against the knight. If you take of course here e takes f6, then okay, bishop to b7 will happen in the near future. Black will play then afterwards a6, and will, I think, in the near future also break the position with the move c5. So I think then it's also a solid game. So in the continuation of the game, Stockfish tried to keep a little bit further the tension, saying okay, I will take out the knight whenever I want to take it, but now so far I want to develop also first my minor pieces. First I want to compete here with the long diagonal on the light square diagonal, if of course black plays now the move bishop to b7. Here Koivisto counterattacks with rook to g8, and Koivisto is saying I will eventually take out your bishop if you don't react immediately, but Stockfish plays now a beautiful line, plays now a very sharp h4, and this is now of course supporting the bishop, but with the risk that actually black could sacrifice the rook for the bishop, and then black would actually have two minor pieces for the rook. Many times two minor pieces are much better than one rook, but this is still a wild position. I'm not sure which position I would love to play because it's so complicated. Still, there is of course this tension in this on this diagonal. In the near future, white can also break the position with move a4. So as I said, this position is so complicated, but it's also worth to study, because as I said also in the beginning of the video, many games are also won by black in this particular position, but many games are also won by white. So for instance, there is a game I see in the database, Vladimir Kramnik against Alexei Shirov. Alexei Shirov won the game here with the black pieces. So as I said, it's a common position. That's why I also love the game, because it's something worth for us to see. So after move h4, we have now rook to g5, of course, by Koivisto. Koivisto is saying, okay, I will give up now the rook for the exchange, but we'll continue now with two minor pieces for the rook. We have h takes g5, knight to d5, and Koivisto is hoping to cement again the position around the square d5. But now comes a move that I think you have to know from white's perspective. If you reach maybe this position many times, then you have to play g6, and this move is of course a sacrifice, but it's only a temporary sacrifice. The most important thing is here that we split the pawn chain, the small pawn chain, and create weaknesses in front of black's king. So after f take g6, we have queen to g4, and okay, Koivisto is saying, I will include now more defenders into the game. Queen to f7 is of course the defensive idea if queen to g6 happens, and then again black wants to play something like bishop to b7. Eventually maybe even queenside castling is a normal idea here, secure the king, and as I said, glue together the pieces. But here Stockfish I think shows its strength really, because Stockfish doesn't take out the pawn immediately. Stockfish is saying, I will again include more pieces into the attack, and that's the beauty about attacking chess. Sometimes taking a pawn is not the most important idea. The piece activity is much more important, and that's I think a beautiful example here. After move bishop to g2, knight to b6. So here Koivisto is trying this idea, first of all, to build this powerful defense around the square d5, again develop the Lightco bishop, and then castle queenside. But Stockfish takes now the pawn on g6, which is huge different, because after queen to f7, now the bishop is coming into the game. So we have now a further attack around the square f7. So it's now really different story. So after move bishop to g6 was played, of course, here we have king to d7, and now rook to h7, and this is now really wild position. Many pieces can of course defend the king. You can of course play knight to e7. This would be a perfect maybe position for black, but actually this is now a huge threat. Knight to e4, look at this with ideas of knight to f6. So that's why you have to keep, I think, a little bit the tension here around the square d5. You have to play with your knight and defend the f6 square. So as I said, this is in my opinion again much better for white. So that's why instead of this knight to e7, you could also play something like king to d8. You could maybe try to escape from this from the 7th rank on the 8th rank, but actually it's not even getting better. Rook to h8 will be the idea. You can maybe try again king to e7, but now knight to d5. You can play maybe here c takes d5, but I think with g4, look at this, with f4 f5, this will be a very annoying position to handle. Even queenside castling is here an opportunity. Then when the rook comes here, maybe rook to h1, rook to h7, including this other rook into the game. Look at this square is taken for the king, this square is taken. So I would not love to play now anymore this game from black perspective. So even if you take out with this pawn, it's not getting better, because still we can play first the check. You have to play something like king to d8, again maybe this idea, but now again queenside casting, and in the near future maybe g4 f4 f5, if possible, of course first maybe f3 g4. Of course the bishop is covering, but as I said, you will eventually get some kind of an attack, because you have here 3 pawns connected, and black's king is naked. As I said, the main goal I think here is rook to h1, rook to h7. So it's not working. After rook to h7, the only good defensive move is actually bishop to e7. We have seen knight to e7 is also not working, but Stockfish continues now the pressure again with this idea, knight to e4, knight to f6 in the near future. We have king to c7, and now g4. Stockfish is using now this this pass pawn on the g file, is trying of course in the near future to play maybe f4 if possible. So far f4 would be also a good idea, because the knight is a little bit overloaded to the defense of the f4 square, but also to the defense of the bishop on e7. So here we have knight to d7. We have now queenside castling. Again, Stockfish 15 is trying to include now more pieces into the attack. Of course, now also this other rook. We have a5. Now finally Koivisto is saying, I have to make some kind of a counterplay here. I have a 4 versus 2 pawn majority, but it seems to me that it's a little bit too slow. in my opinion, it's a little bit too slow because white is much faster. This pawn is very annoying, and there's not a good way to protect anymore the g8 square. The cool part is also that the bishop on g6 can be maneuvered to f7, where it's also controlling the g8 square. So this bishop on c8 is a little bit bad. That's, I think, the worst piece. It's paralyzed by its own pieces. Even if you include it on this side, still it's not aiming into anything. So as I said, this is now really the worst bishop on the board. So in the continuation, we have now knight to c3. The idea is clear: deflect the knight from the defense of the bishop. We have knight takes c3, b takes c3, but now after bishop to a3, Koivisto saves the bishop for a while, but now with king to c2, the king is perfectly fine. And look at this, the white king cannot be even attacked further in the continuation of the game, and now actually our pawn storm is still working. F4, f5 as the main goal. Of course, also g5, g6, g7 is a beautiful idea. So we have bishop to a6. Black is desperately trying to include the bishop into the game, but now rook to h1, we're reaching now a similar position that we wanted to get previously. So we have here rook to d8. If you play rook to f8, maybe to get some kind of an attack, it's not a problem because this one is working. Bishop to f7, then if the continuation of the game, you could maybe try here b4, but actually with f4, look at this, you can maybe even take. Now with f5, look at this, e takes f5, e takes f5, look at this, these two pawns are again marching, and black is, I think, losing the game for sure. So this is not working. So after move rook to h1, we have seen rook to f8 doesn't make sense, so that's why here rook to d8 was played by Koivisto, but now again bishop to f7 with the clear idea to attack now the pawn on e6. Now Koivisto plays the only defensive move, knight to f8, attacking the rook, but Stockfish plays a beautiful tactical shot, plays simply g5. Is now using this very cool pawn on the g file. He's saying, I will even sacrifice the rook for the exchange. We have knight to h7, rook to h7, and okay, Stockfish 15 is down a bishop, but look at this, there's a clear path now for the pawn, and this should be much better for Stockfish. So we have b4. Koivisto has only now the chance to counterattack here on the queen side. We have g6, bishop to b5. This desperate bishop is really trying to get into the game, but it was simply too slow. Really beautiful positional game by Stockfish. We have g7, we have bishop to a4. Finally it was a check, but it's simply too slow because after king to d2, look at this, Stockfish hides behind the pawns, which is really wild. So far no checks are possible. The only check is of course this one. Even if you play, of course, b takes c3, still we can take, and then we can still escape from this attack. So after move king to d2, here Koivisto tried c5, which is of course an idea to finally open the d file, but Stockfish found a beautiful tactical shot play, simply bishop to e8. And this is now beautiful because now the serious threat is a promotion on g8 with the discover check. That's the beauty of this brutal tactic, sacrificing even a bishop. In the continuation of the game, we have here bishop b takes c3. For instance, if you try promotion immediately, this wouldn't be good actually here for Stockfish, if you ask yourself the question, because actually b takes c3 is working, because now the d file is a huge threat. Now even if you step back, look at this, you get simply c takes d4, and the pawns are marching. We can, I think, eventually sacrifice the rook here for the queen. That's not the problem. We will get rid of this, and now you look at this, actually black builds a really powerful pawn storm, so this is not good for white. So after move bishop to 8, this is now much better, because okay, you have one check. Now Stockfish 15 steps back from the potential attack on the d file. We have bishop to e8, but now comes this beautiful tactic. We have queen to g8 to promote. It comes of course with a beautiful check. You have to cover, and now we have rook to h6, bishop to f7, and now after move queen to a8 in this position, Koivisto resigned, because there is now a problem here. King to b6 has to be played. Even if you try something like c2, even if you try to push the pawns further, you get first the check. Now we take out the bishop, and still the queen is stuck at this, covering the square c1, so no promotion are possible here for black. So as I said, after move queen to a8 in this position, Koivisto resigned. Really beautiful pawn march here on the g file. Stunning tactics. So Stockfish first sacrificed two minor pieces for the rook, then eventually sacrificed the rook for the exchange, got a position where it was one piece down, but had this beautiful g pawn, pushed it further, and created really this beautiful discovery attack on the 7th rank with the rook. what to say, really immortal chess game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. Really interesting ideas of the Semi-Slav defense, of the Botvinnik variation. If you want to see more brutal attacks like this, please check out also my other games that we have covered so far, with some beautiful tactical and strategical ideas. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.